Thanks, way to get rid of the transition.
Ready or not.
Okay, everybody, I call to order the special meeting of the River Falls Board of Education. This meeting has been properly notified. Are there any visitors or delegations who would like to address the board this evening? Okay, then we are going to move on to informational items. And the first one is an annual responsibility where we review school safety plans and related safety drills. And I believe, Nate, you're on with this one.
I am, and I'm on the X, so I'll talk to you briefly tonight about.
This meeting has been properly notified.
I wonder if we could get
Are there
Jamie
any
to
visitors
mute.
or delegations who would like to address the board this evening?
I
got
am
it,
sorry, everybody. We're doing our best. with the
Okay.
technology.
Jamie, we can hear the meeting through the phone.
And the first one is an annual responsibility where we review the safety plans and related safety drills. And I believe.
I gotta hear things twice to get it.
Sorry, let's see if I can.
He's got- There we go. Beautiful, thank you.
Are you still able to hear us, Jamie?
Yes,
Try that.
yes, I can hear just fine.
Okay, we're good.
Yep.
So let me say again that we are now going to fulfill an annual responsibility, which is related to our school safety plans. Nate?
Okay, so in addition to being the principal at Greenwood, I'm also the school district safety coordinator. So I'm here to talk to you about school safety tonight. And clearly we've been spending a lot of time at board meetings and at admin meetings talking about school safety, but most of it has been, that has been publicly shared, has been COVID related. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about other safety areas that we're working on. In the district, we continue to make safety a priority for our students and our staff. And what we need to do tonight is just review some of our safety plans / drills that we conduct in all of our schools. This is a requirement that comes to us from the Department of Justice and the Office of School Safety. And eventually, before January, I will have to submit a number of things to them, but one of them will be the items that you have in your packet tonight related to our drills. So although the principals at each of the buildings filled out their paperwork slightly differently, I want to assure you that the plans we put in place at all buildings are consistent. We use a progressive approach in creating safety plans and drills with our students. We do a crawl, walk, run approach, if you will, starting with discussion-based exercises that are led by our school resource officers. And as a reminder, we have two excellent school resource officers here in the district, Officer Gottfredson, who works primarily with the elementary school and the middle school, and then Officer Brian Jensen, who works at the Renaissance and the high school. This year, because of COVID mitigation and COVID security, our SROs weren't coming into our buildings to talk to our students or staff, but instead they created videos, one for all of our staff members, and then different videos for our students based on the age level. The high school, middle school students were getting information related to ALICE, alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. And our elementary age students were getting videos from Officer G that were really connected with a stranger danger kind of approach, listening to your teacher, understanding that you can do certain things if ever you're feeling unsafe. So that was some of our initial drill work. I want to remind you that in addition to the ALICE approach at the middle school and high school, we're talking with our kids about anonymous threat reporting and the importance of speaking up if you think that someone is in harm's way, whether to themselves or to others. And I also want to remind the board that we do have actually two anonymous threat reporting programs that we're using here in our district. We have used a program called Securely for a number of years. And Securely is something that students can text or call into or use online to enter a threat if they feel like there is one. And it's also a program that monitors the use of our Google platform on district devices or logins. So if students are searching things that would be harmful, whether it's suicidal things or how to kill or things that are really dangerous, this would be caught by the system and they would contact one of the building principals who would look into that matter and address it. This year, the Office of School Safety has developed a program that's called Speak Up, Speak Out, that they're requiring all public schools in the state of Wisconsin to use. So we have 2 platforms now. So we're using Securely for the online monitoring, and we're using Speak Up, Speak Out for students to put reports into the system, as I had mentioned. At the elementary level and high school level, as I said, we have some exercises that are more walkthrough based, building tours, making sure that students and staff are familiar with the layout of the building. Really, really important, especially at the high school and the middle school, where we're bringing hundreds of new students who aren't maybe familiar with exits and entry points of the building. And then we also, in the past, have run organized pre-announced drills, which could include lockdown or evacuation drills, could include walking trips to rally points, and in the past has included an active intruder drill. And we've done that at the middle school and high school. This year, we did not do an active intruder drill physically. We did mentally rehearse and have conversations related to that drill. And again, the reason for not conducting it actively was because of the fact that we didn't want to have cohorts crossing in the process of that. Given the fact that we've done that the last several years, our administrators felt comfortable that that was adequate. And I just want to give a shout out here to another group that's working on another area of safety, our district student services team, our group of school psychs and counselors who continue to train and go through professional development opportunities. Recently in November, they received some training through a group out of Milwaukee Public Schools, and they learned about the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. So this is really important for our middle school and high school staff to have some inter-rater reliability when talking with kids or investigating situations where we're afraid students might hurt themselves. We want to make sure that we get valid information, and we want to do it in a consistent way. And up until this point, we've been a little bit inconsistent. I wouldn't say we haven't been thorough, but we're not necessarily trying to get to the same end by following the same path. And this year we're doing that by adopting this system. And this group will also have some training in February from the same group of Milwaukee Public Schools, learning more about identifying self-harm. So there's a lot happening in the district related to school safety, and that's what I have for you tonight, but I'm happy to take questions if you have any.
Thank you for serving as a safety person for our district, first of all. And I'm just curious, I don't know if you know this, but I'm wondering if there's been an increased incidence in things getting picked up by that Securely system, given that our students have been in sort of an altered state with respect to being at school and home and so on.
Yeah, I can tell you only anecdotally.
Yeah.
I don't have the numbers to share with you, but I did ask some of our principals recently how many of the anonymous threats have been given, and it's less than what we've had in the past.
Yeah.
But our Securely system is still picking things up with Google searches.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll pick up things if a student is doing a project.
Sure.
And it's just a keyword search for information that they're seeking, and that sets the lights and buzzers off, and they'll reach out to us, and there's a reasonable explanation. And sometimes kids are just being curious. Sometimes it's unfortunately more than that.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah.
A question and a comment. I was pleased when I heard you say that there is consistency across the elementaries, because that consistency is not necessarily reflected in the reports.
Correct.
And so
Yep.
like one of them talked about the words that we use or the words that we don't use. I'm assuming that kind of conversation is happening in all of our elementaries.
Yep, that's true. We have a plan that gets sent out to staff. It's a script.
Mhm.
It's followed. We generally use the exact same weeks. We first start with it at the elementary or at the secondary level by sending a mailing home to all parents, letting them know what our plan is, and giving parents the opportunity to opt out if they're concerned that their child being part of those discussions is going to be alarming to them. So we start with that. And then at the elementary level, we roll things out in a week by week format. It takes us about a month to get through. A couple of years ago when we started, we used the same format at the middle school and high school. But now after having done that for the last few years, we felt we could cluster events into a shorter window just to help the students and staff get on with the rest of their business.
And then the other question is, you mentioned speak up, speak out, and that there's the capability for student reporting.
Correct.
Is that an additional way that our students can report, or is that taking, it sounds like it, because they can still do some reporting through via securely?
Correct.
So there are really two avenues now, technologically, for our kids to do this.
That's true. We decided as a district that when we were going to teach our students about our threat reporting program, that we were going to focus on speak up, speak out,
Okay.
because we have to use that system.
Okay.
So we didn't want to confuse kids by saying you could do this or that. We're promoting this concept. We've made some posters. We're hanging them in the schools. We won't have anyone to look at them for a few weeks, but they'll be there. And our kids have been taught how to use that. There's an app that can be right on their phone, which wasn't the case with Securely before. It was a little bit different of a way to enter. So it's a good program, and people at the state are trying to be helpful, and some districts maybe don't have the capacity to use a program like Securely like we have had. So it's a good move on the part of the state.
So over time, it's likely that our students will really migrate toward speak out because of our emphasis.
For the anonymous threat reporting,
Sure.
speak up, speak out right now does not have the capacity to track internet searches or emails
that.
like Securely does. So as a district, we'll have to make a decision moving forward if we'll keep that platform for that purpose.
Right. But from a student point of view.
That's right. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for your work and thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay, the next information item is an RF4C update, and I will call on Becky and Nate.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
All right, so we recently had our advisory council meeting and we discussed the goals for this year. We've come up with 3 goals that we're going to be working on. The first 2 are ongoing goals. So, well, first I guess we're going to give update. So we'll go back. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. So RF4C enrollment update, we have 171 enrolled. I think we have 3 more waiting to get in the first part of December. Our capacity is 217. Last year, our capacity was 199, but one of the sites added another AM session, so that bumped up our capacity. We still have the same 7 participating sites, which is great. So our goals, we decided at our advisory council going through, we decided to talk about connecting our RF4 teachers to the district as a priority for us. This is ongoing as well through professional development. So we're connecting with the district, and Jennifer Peterson is helping us with finding more professional development and things that are appropriate for the 4K teachers as well as the rest of the district. So, and our second one, increasing awareness for equity, and we're on the first one.
Oh, we're still on the first one. You want,
No, I was just going by what that says there.
I just got excited. Go ahead.
Take the clicker away from it. So the second one will be talking about the increased awareness of equity and the trauma-informed care, and that is also ongoing. And then we'll talk about our third goal with talking about 4C teacher retention and satisfaction in our program. All right,
Now,
click.
so this is my chart. So just over the past years, and for those of you who haven't met, you met Becky before, coordinator for R4C. I wasn't sure if, okay.
Yeah.
Great. So this is just a chart that kind of shows in the past years we've asked about enrollment, how it's been playing out over the years. And so the blue line on the bottom is RF4C enrollment. So you can see that since it started in 2012. The red is the capacity. So there was only 2 years where we were really close to our capacity. We were pretty good after those two. And the yellow line is, there's always a question about how RF4C affects the kindergarten enrollment. And so when looking at that, you have to keep in mind that the 2016, I'll take that one because it's the lowest point for RF4C. If you take the 2016-17 RF4C number, the kindergarten year is reflected in 2017-18. So you see a consistent, we find about 80% of our kindergartners are enrolled in RF4C from year to year, and that's been consistent throughout the years. So as Becky said, the last few years, we've been trying to be intentional with the advisory committee of the RF4C. We redid our mission statement, and we tried to be intentional and identify different goals each year to work towards. And so the first two goals this year are reflective of two of the goals from last year. A theme that we've heard over and over again from our RF4C teachers is being connected to the school district. So we've been trying to be more intentional with that. And then also bringing RF4C on board with our equity and our trauma-informed care work. So first goal.
Okay, so our action items, collaborative professional development. So the district has really been great about including the 4C in there. This year with the distance learning and stuff, and a lot of the elementary staff using the Seesaw, this is something that we are using as well in the 4K program, the curriculum, the Seesaw online stuff. So we had training with them, with the district, with them, which was great. And possible other options for us. We've included them on the Powered on Well sessions and also in the family means counseling. So David Bell helped us get connected with that as well. That's a great opportunity for our staff. The second goal, some action items. We are going to view the film Resilience at one of the in-services. Our group is pretty small. We have 10 to 12 teachers. So, and I think, let's see, 4 of them are already district teachers. So they've probably already seen that. So that will bring our group smaller so we can come face to face and watch that film. Some books. We're going to do book studies. This is a great opportunity to do book studies. So we've picked out a couple and we're going to start working on those. And also using the River Falls staff, teachers, other teachers use as training for us. So Karen Swanson from the River Falls Montessori, she is the counselor there. She's going to do a training with us too as well.
And so the third goal, and I will say that with our model, we pay sites to deliver a service to us, and we expect through the contract certain things. I will say it's an ongoing challenge to find that balance between the RF4C teachers being a part of the district, because in a sense they're hired by the independent sites, and each site's a little bit different. But looking at ways to honor and keep make those 4K teachers feel like they're a part of what we do. And so that's reflected we're trying to reflect that in all of these goals. The third goal, which is, I'll talk about a little bit more, is a little bit tricky. So many years, when we're looking at the budget cycle, we'll look at teacher pay, the district's teachers pay, benefits, those sorts of things. We'll look at comparables. To try to figure out if we're being fair to our teachers, to our staff, to our bus drivers. And so this year we'd like to do the same for our 4K students or our 4K teachers. And in doing so, knowing that what we can really control in terms of what they pay is going to be tricky. So we've got some action steps in there to work collaboratively with the different 4K sites, their directors, to try to work on this. So the action steps for that, Becky has been looking at pay comparables. And once again, the comparables are hard because some districts might be the same size as us, but they may not be community-based. They might be housed within the school district. And it's also difficult because when you have the community-based portion of it, the independent childcare centers may not be willing to share out, what they're paying in those benefits. Ours have been helpful and have given us the information, but when we're looking at comparables outside of our community where we don't have the personal connections, that can be a bit tough. So we're starting to gather that information. We hope to have a picture of what comparables might look like and see how it applies to our teachers sometime before the next budget cycle is done. We'd also like to do listening sessions with the teachers and paraprofessionals. We've got that scheduled in early December. And just similar to what Dave and Jamie have done with our staff, we'll sit down with the teachers and get feedback from them, and sit down with the paraprofessionals and get feedback from them. And then we've already started conversations, Becky has started conversations with the site directors about how we would like to work with them to try to get the teachers what we feel they ought to be getting in comparison to what's around the area. So those are our 3 goals. And then the idea would be that at the end of the school year, we'd be able to, or early fall next year, be able to update you on kind of where we are at with these things. So with that, any questions or comments?
Quick comments. I'm the board member on the advisory committee, and we had a good conversation this last time, but we were in small groups, and our group kind of got sidetracked a little bit, kind of about this and pay comparables, and just because we've got a couple new members, these teachers are paid differently than our others. So our kindergarten teachers have fringe benefits, they're on a salary schedule, all that. These teachers are not. So even though we consider the 4-year-old kindergarten part of the district, those teachers are on a very different situation. And it's a conscious decision the board made back when we first went this direction. If we would have made it part of the district, like a few do in the state, but I think most of them are kind of community-based like we are, we literally would have put most of the preschools out of business in town. And rather than do that, we decided to cooperate with them. I think one of the things that maybe we weren't as aware of as board members at the time was just the fact that these teachers would be on such a different salary schedule, et cetera. So I think I mentioned this a few weeks back, but I think when we get that information from listening sessions and the comparables you're getting, I think it also goes to the request I made that at some point in December or January, we talk about how the funding, maybe have a presentation by Chad about how this funding really works, to remind those of us who've been on the board for a while, those of you who are newer, where does the money come from? How does it get spent? Where does it go out? Who does it go to? How does it get taken care of? And all of that. Because I think going forward, this is a concern we've had for a long time. I continue to have it too, is just that these teachers are really paid differently, and they don't make what our other teachers make. I guess that's the most simple way to put it, or even close. So.
And luckily, we haven't had much turnover either. So we've been very fortunate that way.
I was going to ask that next, is what are we seeing in terms of turnover? I'm familiar with just a couple, through personal experience, but
we've had pretty low turnover. So we've had one site that's had like 3 different teachers so far, one that's flipped a couple times, and then the rest have been with us pretty much every year since we started.
Okay.
So.
And that was one thing we talked about when we thought about the goal, if we wanted to focus on just teacher retention, because at face value, we've had great teacher retention with our RF4C program. However, we had a satisfaction because although we're keeping the teachers there, early childhood is an area that's traditionally overlooked, and I would say at some point undervalued as a society in general. So thinking about the work that these folks are doing for us as a school district is laying a strong foundation for us to build upon. And so when we say retention and satisfaction, our retention is good, but these people are doing the job because they love it. They love the kids. And I think once we look at the numbers and look at what they make as compared to, say, our district teachers, especially, we're going to see quite a gap. And then we need to think about how do we honor the work that they're doing.
So the next time you come with this,
Mhm.
let's you connect with Chad, so that let's do it in harmony. So we'll really kind of have a presentation about it and talk about where that money is, how much money are we even talking about, where does it come from? The state aid formulas is different for these students because they're half-time students, not full-time students. There's all of that factors into it. I think it's be good for us when we're thinking about this stuff to have a larger context.
Couple new guy questions here. Actually, Alan touched on the salary and compensation issue a little bit, but the certification for these teachers, is that an early childhood education certification through a 4-year?
They have to have a DPI license, teacher license. Yep,
Okay.
and it has to be age appropriate. It has to be early childhood or
Okay.
kindergarten level.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the school district has no, obviously they're not employees in the school district, so the school district doesn't have any, do they have some kind of screening or approval process and who teaches these children or not? Or
They're hired by the sites that we
by the
partner
sites?
with.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
The majority of them are, yes.
Yeah.
We do have some district teachers that work in the classrooms as well,
okay.
some of them.
When you're talking about salary studies and such for these people, thankfully, we haven't had a lot of turnover in those teachers. That's awesome. The contract that the school districts have with these sites, is there anything in there that we can state or influence or incent them to pay those teachers somewhat differently than they would be?
Yeah, currently there's not, but, and so we're kind of in a spot right now where we've had this for 12 years now.
This is our 9th year.
9th, are you sure?
Yeah.
Seems like 12.
9th year.
He's only been in charge.
Whether it's 9 or whether it's 12, since the beginning of this, the contract hasn't stated anything like that. So we've already set quite a precedent of how we give pay increases. And so the conversation comes in with the site directors on, because what we don't want to do is, I don't think what we want to start doing is starting to chip away at the percentage that they get, but having conversations about if we can give you more than what we have in the past, we want to dedicate it towards something. So that's where those conversations with the site directors come in, help them understand what that structure might be.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not really sure what the contractual language is
Yeah.
or the compensation, but we really have currently we have no impact or no influence as to what those teachers are paid, right?
No.
Okay.
And just I just want to reinforce the idea that that all of the RF4C teachers could be looking for jobs in school. They're certified to be at least kindergarten teachers. So the fact that we've been able to retain these people,
Yep.
and they haven't gone off to the public school, it's
Absolutely.
just quite something about those people.
That's all I have.
It's amazing, honestly, for what some of them make, that we have had the retention that we have. You must be one heck of a lead in this
Yeah.
4K organization, Becky, for
I
people to
always tell
stay.
them how lucky I am to have such a great group of people to work with. They truly are.
That's fantastic. I do have one question. Nate, you mentioned that 80% of our kindergartners are in our 4K. Do you know,
On
do the
average,
other
yeah.
20% go right to kindergarten without 4K?
I don't know that. That's what I would assume.
You
But
assume? Okay.
They could be at St. Bridget's for one thing in their 4K program, and that's not part of the district. They also could be open enrolled somewhere else.
Okay.
And then some of the kids that are open enrolled in our district have been in the daycare here in the district since they were born. So then they go back to their district for kindergarten. So then we lose them too. So it's kind of a swap out. And depending if some of the kids stay at St. Bridget's, they have a high number. I'd say they're up in between 30 and 40 kids
Okay.
alone right there in their program. So
Thank you. I'm glad you're doing the pay comparables. I think that's going to be really helpful in a discussion that's probably a little bit overdue for those 4K teachers.
there will be a few different comparables because some are district run programs and we can get an idea what the districts pay their 4K teachers because we don't have that here. And also what the local districts like around us, like Prescott and Ellsworth and Baldwin, also the ones, I'm checking out the ones that are comparable in size to River Falls, like Rice Lake and Chippewa and Menominee, so we can see what they're doing too. So it's a lot of calling, a lot of daycares, but and who's willing to give me information, so.
But that brings up, and Cindy, you mentioned, Becky, there's a lot of responsibility here because unlike we kind of have our kindergarten instruction, even though it's spread across 4 elementaries here, is fairly consistent. You're dealing with 7 different vendors, outside vendors to the school district, and their idiosyncrasies related to our kids. So we're trying to keep stuff on track with all of our kids and consistent with our students through 4 different independent vendors who contract with the school district to do this. That's a lot, and appreciate the work that you do with that because there's a lot to this.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Okay, the final 2 information items, C and D, are related to learning environments. My suggestion, unless anybody has anything specific that they would like to bring up or ask, that we combine those 2 agenda items in the first action item A under 5. Is that fine? All right, then I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Benson.
Okay. The final 2 is
I believe Jamie is going to be referring to the screen, so we should be looking at that and then listening to him. Jamie, can you hear us?
Very good. I apologize for not being present at the meeting. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep.
I am in quarantine as a member of my household has tested positive for COVID. A couple of different things to share as we typically do at this point in our agenda. I go through the PowerPoint slides, and so Aaron's just going to pinch hit for me and flip through the first series of slides, if you would, Aaron.
All right. There's St. Croix County, Pierce County this week, the university, DHS concerns, positivity rate, snapshot of school data, and then the local snapshot. There's your screen, Jamie.
Next slide.
Okay, it's on the recommendation page.
Very good, thank you. Again, I apologize for the format here, having to kind of skip through. We are all obviously very aware of where we're at with increasing concerns with COVID. Our district has remained nimble and responsive to some of the changing landscape. You can see on our summary page that we often refer to where we're at with the number of quarantine cases, isolation cases for both students and staff. Obviously, if there are questions, we can go back to that. But I believe, Aaron, at this time now you have on the screen what I always call kind of the next and final summary where I include any recommendations. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so in the blue, where we're at with our November 16 through December 6th at-home distance learning for the high school, as well as the pivot we made in the middle school this last Friday for the middle school. Winter athletics suspended until December 5. I know previously we had talked about that being December 7. Obviously, the board will have some discussion on this, and that we've closed our facilities to all external groups indefinitely. So again, recommendation to suspend athletics until December 5th. Looking forward tonight to hear some board discussion regarding the next piece here, assuming the high school is back to a hybrid learning environment on December 7th. Is the board comfortable with the resumption of extracurriculars, including high-risk sports, with tight mitigation plans and the understanding that the district will pivot, suspend, or cancel activities, including those athletic activities as needed due to COVID-related concerns? And on the bottom of the slide, the first memo, I wanted to just share kind of a narrative. If you can be patient with me, I'm just going to kind of summarize the contents of that particular letter. Again, we've remained nimble and responsive to the changing landscape of COVID in our schools. Over the last 2 months, we've made pivots with fall sport teams, Rocky Branch Elementary, middle school and high school. And I just cannot emphasize enough that with all of our decisions, we need to recognize that both staff and student safety remains paramount in our considerations. And so, although we're not alone in controlling the regional and statewide spread of COVID, in the coming days, our district and community actions and the choices that we make will have implications on the spread of COVID. We can make a difference here in our own community, and where we are at currently with our district plan reflects those efforts. We all know that we're seeking sacrifice to create a light of hope, and that if our community does pull together, we're hopeful that we can bring students in grades 6 through 12 back to school safely, and kids back to enjoying life experiences that we as adults enjoyed at their age. Community sacrifices include considering what we're going to do with Thanksgiving festivities and limiting kids playing with each other in our neighborhoods and visiting each other's homes, temporarily suspending school co-curricular clubs and athletics, staying sheltered when we are ill, avoiding group gatherings, wearing masks, continuing to employ all of the reasonable mitigation efforts that we can to, again, keep our staff and our students safe, while also making contributions community-wide. We understand some of the pain that's associated with this ongoing school-restricted activities. The pandemic's alarming trajectory, however, demands community action and school action now. So here's the plan. Here's our path moving forward. And frankly, I don't know that we can make long-term plans, so I call this kind of our short-term plan. We've made changes in grades 6 through 12 to go to our at-home distant learning in hopes that we will decrease positive cases and close contact exclusions from our buildings. We will obviously continue to monitor our elementary schools daily. Moving forward, we intend to return those 6 through 12th grade students on December 7th back to our hybrid in grades 7, 12, and 6th grade face-to-face 5 days a week. We'll do so under obviously very tight mitigation guidelines that we already have in place. We're going to monitor daily and weekly any and all of our COVID concerns as we set a goal to see where we are at after coming back, hopefully, on the 7th. And we'll see how far we get between then and December 22. At which time we will continue to assess our status in all of our programming headed into the holiday break. So short term, we'll see how this works. Meanwhile, we're going to look for ways to expand academic and social emotional support for all of our students to be served at school, if and when we can do that in small cohorts. We're currently providing some support to our high school special education and Renaissance students, even in this at-home environment. We're going to be mindful, all of us, that we don't find ourselves pitting academics against athletics and vice versa. Instead, we must continue to focus on the whole child, and that means every child. Regardless of the learning environment, we're going to continue to build upon safe ways to create personal student connections to their peers, their teachers, counselors, and all of our school resources. We have to remind ourselves of our district mission to be innovative in personalizing education in ways that help all students reach their full potential in a safe and nurturing environment. All students, regardless of their passion and or interests. We must never lose sight of this mission, and we need to move beyond the time of debating over some of these emotional and controversial issues and turn more attention towards other important, innovative, personalized approaches to support all students. And that might mean sometimes being able to bring here to school in small groups, one-on-one or small cohort groups, even while the majority of students will be learning remotely. We're going to go cautiously and carefully with any of those ideas. So to that end, regardless of our learning environment, we're going to continue to look for ways to support all students for academics and social emotional ways. Whether those kiddos are in the chess club, algebra, forensics, athletics, the arts, or a welding class, we have to continue to keep the focus on all of our kids. Last thing I'll say here is that, again, staff and student safety remains our top priority. So that's my editorial. I wanted to kind of just share some thoughts as the board now is being asked to act upon the recommendation that we will suspend athletics until December 5th. That just moves up their ability to practice a couple days sooner than we were originally talking about with December 7th. Remember the end game, if in fact we're allowed to move forward on December 5, the end game there helps them get in the required number of practices so that hopefully they can also begin competitions. That's it for me. Again, I'm looking forward to listening and hearing board discussion at this point.
Thank you, Jamie. I wanted to bring up, I imagine that everybody has received the same emails that I've had. I've had a lot of emails over the last weeks. And it strikes me that parents speak very, very passionately about the well-being of their students. And for many parents, that well-being is connected to playing in sports. For other parents, it's connected to being able to receive special education services or participating in mock trial or being able to come and work in the shop. And as I've thought about this, so what I realize is all of these kids are different and have unique needs, but the one common denominator among all of them is having the ability to be at school in person for at least some of the day. We can't do all of these other things unless we have the chance to be here. So that's one of the things that I think about. The other thing that I think about is oftentimes people will suggest that it's really important that we keep our kids safe and so forth, and I completely agree. But I also want to add that we have to keep the adults in the building safe too, and they have to feel comfortable being here because schools aren't just about kids. And so I'm really taking into account the concerns that I'm hearing from teachers about the safety in schools. And so I plan to support this motion because I think that it gives us the best chance of being able to eliminate risk or mitigate risk. We're never going to eliminate it, but to mitigate risk, hopefully so that numbers can become manageable and we can bring our kids back into school for face-to-face learning, including all of the things that meet their need for well-being, sports, music. You know, for some kids, it's eating at school and being with adults who are predictable and supportive. And those are very, very important things. So I am in support of the motion. Amy, I know that you said that you wanted to speak tonight too.
Yep, I just have one or two things to add to what you said. One of the things that of all the phone calls and emails that we got, it seemed like people were leery that we were going to tie in sports into the vote, whether or not we were at distance learning, a hybrid, or face-to-face learning. But I just want to point out that 2 weeks ago, our board, we voted on winter athletics, choir, and band as 3 separate things. And I think going ahead, we should still keep that policy. I think that's a good policy. And I am in support of this right now because with the numbers when they were climbing, a short pause on school and athletics and extracurriculars really seemed to be a prudent decision. And the reason why I think it's a prudent decision is we just have to look at what just happened at Rocky Branch Elementary. The cases were spiking, or not spiking there, but we had quite a few cases, and it seemed the right thing to do to shut Rocky Branch down for 2 weeks to try and get it under control. And it seems like that's working, and they're back. So I am hoping that just by pulling back for these 2-3 weeks, we can see that our mitigation strategies in the school district are working. And then I will happily support not only getting kids back in the classroom where they belong, but extracurriculars so the kids can get back and start doing the things that they love to do with the people that they like to be with. So I wholeheartedly support this to just put a pause on it and then come back on December 5th and December 7th. So, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we will keep these issues separate. It's not a one size fits all. That's it.
Thank you, Amy.
So I echo the thoughts, I guess, that have been shared. I'm probably maybe on one side in regard to my personal preference wouldn't necessarily have been to tie them together. I'm fine doing that for the time being, just to give everything kind of a pause and reset at the same time. But I'm encouraged, I guess, to hear that moving forward that we're looking at all of these items as we have with the schools and different athletic teams and kind of that surgical approach. And I guess I would want to make sure too that, I guess what I'd like to see us do moving forward is make that determination and leave it in the hands of the administration to do like they have done up to this point with the schools, is to say that every time there's some concern about something that we're not having to come back to us unless it's a major issue. I guess I have my faith that we have plans in place to hopefully mitigate this, but when we don't, or we're not able to, that a decision can be made at the administrative level to say, hey, this didn't work out for the band or the choir, or it didn't work out for this school, or it didn't work out for this sports team, and make the determination that needs to be done there. So I'd like to see us move forward with the idea that those individual decisions on activities in schools would be handled at the admin level moving forward, and that way we don't have to worry about tying things together as we kind of gave the appearance of at the end at that last meeting as well.
Isn't this directly tying them together?
The recommendation
Yeah.
this time?
Yeah.
It is this time, or it's seeing them as linked at least.
I guess I would say it as we're taking a collective pause all of it together. And I shouldn't say it, not together. At the same time, they're both being paused until a certain date. In this case, activity sports, but even a decision on, there were some things like, outside use of the facilities and those things. I just view that as all independent moving forward. And whether it's bringing a cohort of kids in for an instruction that is deemed to be needed, I would trust the admin recommendation on that moving forward, or the discretion on that moving forward. I wouldn't want to link a hybrid learning environment to any of these things, as kind of outlined in Jamie's email, is the discretion to make those decisions as it's deemed to be safe on a case-by-case basis.
Agree with your last point, Todd. As far as keeping them separate, we're taking collective pause now, but that's not to say that we, after December 7th or what it is, that if we continue with distance learning, that we could potentially have.
Or have to
sports.
shift back in the future.
Yep.
I think that one of the things that we have to remember is part of the challenge about this is where it falls on the calendar because of the Thanksgiving break. Otherwise, my understanding is we likely would have had 2 weeks, and there would have just simply been a more easily defined break for everything. It was the added layer of Thanksgiving. And so every time we come to these, it's a different kind of a unique situation. So I am willing to agree. I too am reluctant to make any hard and fast judgments about we will always do this or we will never do that, because everything is changing so very quickly and there are unique circumstances. I believe that. At the same time, it's hard for me to envision what a situation would look like where we deem it's not safe enough to bring kids and adults into the building for learning, but we are saying it's safe enough to have the risk to the community to bring them in for extracurricular activities, particularly the ones that are high risk. And so I am in agreement, I am willing, I'm reluctant to make these hard and fast rules. But I also think we have to be mindful of the fact that it's hard to imagine what that would look like. It's not that they can't happen, but it's tricky to think about.
I think we have to keep it
right.
mind.
Yeah.
But what this does, excuse me, what that does is it really is continuing the practice that we have already started, where the board provides direction and then we rely on administrators to help make these finer tuned changes when they are necessary. And I think that Jamie and his team have demonstrated the capacity to do that, to make these really hard calls about pivots and so forth. So I interrupted you, Ted.
Yeah, I just was going to say, it's hard to, and there's a million examples you can try to run your head through for different scenarios. I could see a situation where certain activities were excluded, like they were in the case of football and a few other things, but it didn't affect the learning environment. And in my mind, there would be a way to do the opposite, to say, look, we don't have the teachers necessarily to staff this department or this building, but that doesn't mean there were any close contacts with other activities or with another group that was deemed. And to me, there's a level of when you go to distance learning, because you have close contacts, you can still to some extent provide those to provide some form of that activity. It's not in person, but the fear I have with it is you can't have virtual basketball practice, you can't have virtual hockey practice or a hockey game. And so to me, there's a layer further than that of, can this be reasonably done virtually? And if not, then there should be another consideration for, what is the thing that caused either the learning environment to change or one of the athletic teams to be excluded, and look at those independently of each other versus just saying, we're virtual for school, but that pulls everything else with it. So I get the point. I think there's a couple layers further for me in terms of deciphering what that means for other activities too. And You know, in a perfect world, you would be in at least hybrid, and all of those things would happen after it. But I do see a path to some of those things happening, and I do see some merit in some of those things happening, regardless of what we're doing for a learning environment. So.
I agree, Todd. You look at the teams, for instance, team sports or organizations, the cohort is shrunk. You know, if you have hybrid learning here, you have half the 9th and 10th on first part of the week. Well, you have E's through what's the letter that it cuts off. You have half the students here Monday, Tuesday, half the students here Thursday, Friday. If you take it down to a sport or a team level, the cohorts are even shrunk even further. So I could see a situation where you could go from distance learning, still be at distance learning, and have an activity because the cohort shrunk even more. But I agree. I don't think we should say that we will never do this or we will always do this, that type of thing. It's too fluid at this point. But I could see an opportunity for us to expand that opportunity or give that opportunity to students. So.
I appreciate the document that Jamie sent us this afternoon that talks about surrounding regional school districts and what they're doing. My read on it is that we're not the only district that's doing this. So some of the comments that I've been reading in these is we may be the only school in the conference that's doing this. The other schools will have an advantage over us. There are several other schools who are doing something similar to this in the conference. And quite frankly, if the rates don't go down, there could be more school districts deciding to do this or suspending it. And of course, the whole state of Minnesota has suspended this for the time being. So we are not alone if we take this route. And it's not, as some folks have feared that have contacted me, that we're trying to now reverse our decision to go ahead with winter sports. We're putting a pause on winter sports. And if things go well, we'll be back just as soon as we can. And it seems to me to be reasonable.
I guess I'll chime in. I agree with so much of what's been said, but I don't think it reflects this particular proposal. Definitely the pause is a wise decision. I absolutely think that's the right decision. But I think what we do next should each of those things, I'll just say it again, as all of you have said, should be evaluated independently of each other. So to tie sports or other things that are talked about in this proposal to coming back to a hybrid mode, it sets a precedent that if we're coming back, we don't have to evaluate those other things on their own merits for their safety, but we're just going to do it because we came back from into a hybrid mode. So, and vice versa. If we don't come back, it doesn't mean we necessarily shouldn't do some of these other things. But so I don't support tying them together like that. I think the criteria should be, can we do it safely? Not are we in a hybrid mode?
I think that this is making a decision about December 5th and December 7th. And so that's a discrete decision. What Todd is talking about is how we are going to look at this going forward. And so this is not saying, and I'm just making this up, if we have to move into 100% virtual in February, that it will automatically mean that extracurriculars are also on pause. That is not included in this motion.
Well, I
And that's
understand,
in
but
accordance with Todd.
yeah, I understand that. But what is included is if we come back into a hybrid mode on December 7th, are we comfortable resuming the extracurriculars? I mean, that's a direct tie. I don't think we should tie those together.
So is your
Isn't this
question
what
if we
you're
don't
talking
come back?
So what would you prefer to see?
I would say we should evaluate whether we're going to do these extracurricular things on an ongoing basis based on the safety of their merits, not whether or not we're in a hybrid mode.
Sure. Yep. I think the way I might summarize my understanding of what's happening is exactly what you just said, with the idea that as of today, that date would be December 5th for the athletics. As of today, that date would be December 7th for the 6th through 12th grade. And those things would be constantly evaluated up until that time and then thereafter that time.
Yeah. So what we're saying is we're pausing until those dates. And we need to reevaluate to decide if we're going to move forward at that point or not. Or if we're going to continue the pause or relieve the pause. Yeah.
But we're also saying that the board doesn't need to make that decision. Yeah, it doesn't need to have to meet to make that decision.
Yeah, I think we need to trust our
Well,
administrators on.
I mean, I think that's the reality anyway. School went into distance mode, middle school did. We didn't make that decision.
No.
We could always call a special board meeting if we had some strong preference or something and talk about it, but.
I go back to the April, I'm sorry, Stacy, I jumped in. I go back to the April meeting before I was actually on the board, and we had the conversations as to granting the authority to the administration to make certain decisions, which I think, and that was, approval was given to Jamie and the admin team to do that. And I think Jamie exercised that wise decision in moving us to distance learning for the high school, closing Rocky Branch for those 2 weeks, these types of things. I look at the same authority that was given in that April meeting as being used again here. And this was with respect to COVID back in April. So I think moving it to the administration team to the football season was another one where it was closed or canceled for 2 weeks or paused for 2 weeks. I look at having that authority to the admin team as being helpful and more timely than us meeting again.
Which isn't, that's how we've done it.
Yeah.
It's not any different. I think Mike's question would, if I'm hearing this right, is on this, it says, assuming high school is back to hybrid learning environment on December 7th, then is it okay if we do athletics? So is your question, if we're not back to hybrid learning on December 7th, then is
I don't have a
athletics a
question.
separate question, or what's the?
I don't have a question. I'm just saying, I don't support that. That's all.
Got it.
Because it ties them together.
It ties.
Yeah.
So would you prefer to have it as two separate motions? Well, the thing is, we don't need to take a motion to go back into hybrid learning on the 7th. That, we've never taken a motion to go out of. a learning
Exactly,
environment.
yeah.
So would you prefer to have this, let's see, assuming the administration thinks that deems it safe enough that the board is willing to support the resumption of athletics on December 5th?
Why do we need that? Why do we need that?
Why do we need it?
Yeah.
Well, I think 2 reasons I would say off the top of my head. And the first one is at the end of our last meeting last week, the board gave some pretty clear direction to the administration to come up with some kind of a proposal about this. That's the first thing.
I think
right?
that was around criteria that would help guide those decisions, right?
I took it to mean at last week's meeting that if we weren't going to be in the hybrid, like, because if that's the case, then we're basically telling the administration to decide whenever that start date would be. And I didn't leave last meeting with that impression. So I mean, I'd be happy to do that now, but I felt like we were at the opposite of that. So I think that's probably why this came up in the first place, because otherwise we'd be telling administration to make that decision and the start date, I think, is technically today for some of those athletics. So I didn't leave with that picture, but I would certainly support it if that's what we're talking about.
But that leads me to my second point of why I think we're bringing this up. And that's to say that we are extremely fortunate in this district to have the kind of relationship between the board and the superintendent, that we can have that kind of trust. On the other hand, the superintendent is going to want to have some kind of direction from the board. Otherwise, I mean, it's a pretty dangerous position to be in, to simply be responsible for all the decisions without taking into account what the board's desire is.
Yeah,
so I think that's important.
And I think that's fair. But I also think if you look at how we've been operating through this whole environment through this year, the administration has been keeping us extraordinarily well informed of their thinking and what they're planning to do and so on, what they're thinking about planning to do, getting our input individually and as a board together in our meetings. We are expressing our views every week on this. there's no secrets here that, everybody knows our positions, I think. And so I think that give and take is a constant give and take that is informing and, giving to the administration, I think, the sense of what this board wants. If they all of a sudden made a decision that we were all against, they would know it, and we would probably reverse it,
It's true.
right?
I think, however, as the result of our conversation last time, it became clear to administration that we needed to have some measure of consensus on the board about what this start date is going to be. Because otherwise, initially it was going to be the 7th. Well, it could be the 7th. What if it's the 4th? But what if it's whatever? I think that they're wanting to have some direction from the school board.
I guess I don't know how you can predict what the start date will be when the whole point of the pause is to see if we can't kind of flatten out the increase, the curve going up.
So what you're saying, Mike, is no earlier than. To
Yeah,
start no earlier than.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, I think
Yeah.
that was the right choice. Let's pause, see if we can't
Yeah.
at least smooth these numbers out. And then we have to reevaluate. Because if they're 10 times higher,
It's not like we're gonna.
we can't say today that, well, we proved it 2 weeks ago, so now it's okay, but they're 10 times higher.
I think
Even they wouldn't
it's
probably
wise
go for that.
to suspend. I mean, it's
I think
to
it's,
start no earlier than. I mean, like you said, we could
Yeah.
have deeper.
I mean, then you're kind of getting to two different questions. One is, how long should we pause? And the other one is, do we tie the resumption of sports back to the resumption of hybrid learning environment? I agree with the pause and the time frame for the pause. But I think Jamie and his staff would say, we're going to continuously evaluate that up until that date. And hopefully a little bit before that date, we're going to have a good sense of whether we're going to go back to a hybrid environment or not, regarding the hybrid thing. And the same thing with sports.
so how does this now work with what you're asking?
Well, this directly ties resuming sports with resuming a hybrid mode. It doesn't really talk about why.
Well,
Jamie, would you like to weigh in on the kind of direction that would be helpful for you to have?
It's a good
Is he
illustration.
still there?
This was a good illustration that light travels faster than sound. I think he's there, but that pause is really amazing.
He's probably listening, but
He's grabbing this.
he's
He's
listening,
there.
watching YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he'll be
Is that a
30
delay?
seconds.
I was gonna say, I think there's
Yeah.
a delay in the.
Yeah, I would say number one, for the board to take action on the recommendation that we are suspending athletics until December 5. I appreciate the conversation that has been had, and it feels to me like for the most part, there's consensus within the board to say, moving forward, we will continue to trust administration to continue to do their job to make adjustments with our learning environment on an as-needed basis. And if and when the day comes that the board feels as though they're on a different page with administration, we meet every Monday, and we as a board at that time can move our district in a different direction. The third thing I'm hearing is that there's some receptiveness, there's some consensus within the board to say we're willing to look at the learning environment different than we look at activities, but that at this point in time, we don't want to tie our hands and say things like, always, no matter what we do with our learning environment, we will always move forward with athletics. I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing the contrary to that. Nor does the board want to say, never will we ever do this either. That we have to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on with COVID. We have to keep the safety of our staff and our students in mind at all times. And this will be reviewed every Monday. So for the here and now, to recap, I would say the number one thing we're looking for is for the board to accept the recommendation. I believe Stacy has made that motion. I have not yet heard a second.
I'll second.
And
didn't make the
the
motion
rest of
yet.
what I heard was healthy discussion about how we're going to continue to move forward.
It's all of this. It's all of this. So actually, I haven't made the motion yet, but I will. So, I move that we accept the administrative recommendation to suspend athletics until December 5th. And that, I guess I should say this the other way. I move that we accept the administrative recommendation that administration can make the decision for athletics to resume no sooner than December 5th, assuming that the high school is back in a hybrid learning environment on December 7th, and that administration has deemed it to be in keeping with our safety protocols, and that appropriate tight mitigation plans will prevail. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to blend the recommendation as well as the discussion point together into one motion.
Who's in charge of writing that motion down?
I think Darren
yeah.
is feverishly writing.
That was really not good. I will edit something.
Can play the recording back to get the exact.
But there will be a 30-second delay.
Yeah.
So you are tying this motion.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
On
You are
this one I
tying this
am.
hybrid learning.
On this one I am, because it's very specifically tied to these dates. Because of this, the unique aspect of how Thanksgiving lands, that is what ties these two things together. I am reluctant, as I said before, I'm reluctant to say that it will always be the case that if we are in virtual learning, that we will not have extracurricular activities. I'm reluctant to make these broad statements because the future is so unknown. On the other hand, I am also saying it is hard for me to imagine a circumstance where we would be able to say it is safe enough for us to have extracurricular activities, but it is not safe enough to bring people into school.
Then why are you tying them together?
In this particular case, Mike.
Because I am trying to be able to find some common ground here.
I think we're splitting hairs, Mike.
Yeah.
I think you're right. We're going to continue to move ahead. We've been moving ahead this way. I think Jamie needs something to hang his head on right now for the December 5 and 7. This motion does that, and it gets us through Thanksgiving. As Stacy said, maybe this could be worded differently, but I don't think it matters whether we tie these two specifically or have two separate motions right now. Does it?
Okay, I'll second.
I was gonna say, I'll
Okay,
second.
thank you, Amy.
Can
Yeah.
Yes.
we, can I have additional, so the question I would have, and I feel like I'm just saying this because I'm not 100% clear. If December 5th comes and there's, all of a sudden, Kit or whoever finds out that 12 of the teachers at the high school have been close contact or have been traced to a COVID and they're excluded, and we decide, nope, we need 1 more week or we need 2 more weeks between coming back from coming back to hybrid, or we say we're going to stay in virtual learning at the high school because of teacher close contacts or staff close contacts, whatever it is. What would be, I'm unclear what the consideration for sports and athletics would be at that point in time. I would like to see it be given the chance to resume based on administrative decision, but I'm not clear when we say if on that date they're coming back, then if we decide not to come back on hybrid, does that mean no athletics? Because then I'm with Mike that we've tied them exactly together, and I don't want to do that.
I think they need to be separate.
I think this is coming from when we left the last meeting, we were very specific that we wanted the extracurriculars to be tied to face-to-face, to hybrid. And so I think that's why it's tied together in the discussion here. I would like to see us separate them, consider them completely separately. I'm actually more comfortable with sports when we're not face-to-face or hybrid, when we're virtual or remote. I'm significantly more comfortable because we have a lot less cross cohorting in that situation, but I would like to see us just separate them. Athletics is, because we voted on yes to winter sports, we're suspending it till December 5th at the earliest, period. Right? We've already made the decision to go hybrid for school. That part's done. It does not have to be connected in this. And then going forward for our administrative team, let's consider them separately. Consider each of the areas, how you see fit, and let's talk about it how we have in the past with I think the relationship with the administrative team and the board is really in a great spot right now. And we're getting lots of perspectives represented, but I think that's the issue is let's just separate them, suspend sports, hybrid's already done, virtual's already done, they're not connected.
So suspend sports indefinitely?
No, until December 5th.
So I
At
think
the
Okay,
earliest.
but this is
Right.
really, I think this is a very important conversation for us to have. And that's that I understand that if the school is in virtual learning, it is safer for the athletes to come into the school that doesn't have other people around. That does not necessarily mean it's safer for the community, because we're still talking about community spread. And that community spread is going to negatively impact the welfare of all of the other kids in the district.
Yep.
That is a very, very important point that we have to take into account. We are not looking only at individuals. We are looking at the good of all of our students and all of our teachers.
I agree.
Agreed.
I agree with that completely. I'm not saying that I'm comfortable with sports if we're in virtual. I'm saying I'm more comfortable with them virtual than in person. That's me. I think athletes would say, I'm going to stay home and only go to my sport and go home. They're going to be more disciplined. We're going to know where they are more. They're going to be more motivated in school. They're going to keep a connection that they need to stay more motivated. They're going to do social things anyway. So I think, I don't think we're that far off, Stacy. I just think that we should separate.
Okay,
This is my position, separate extracurriculars from school, make those decisions separately. And maybe the administrative team or the board says, you know what, we do want them connected at a later date.
So let's.
So I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning, is that I really would just like to see us take everything individually. That's why we did that 2 weeks ago when we voted on winter athletics, choir, and band, all as 3 separate things, right? So.
Okay, so let's take off my motion from the table and everybody help me. Let's come up with what an appropriate motion would be to get at what we're talking about here.
So could it be as simple as this, to just amend the motion that you just suspend athletics until at least December 5th, cross out assuming back to the hybrid learning environment, and then the date for the hybrid learning environment would be the 7th, unless sometime between now and then either of those two, and I'm not saying this is part of the motion, but for me, it would be as simple as just crossing off, assuming back to hybrid learning environment.
I think it's just as easy as saying suspending sports till no sooner than December 5th, period.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing about assumption of hybrid, distance learning.
But then what?
Yeah,
Yes,
maybe.
it should
Yeah.
say
Yes,
extracurricular.
extracurricular.
Yeah.
Dave, do you have any wisdom? Okay. Okay.
I think that's why I agree with Steve, that the language of no sooner than the 5th allows the administrative team to continue to monitor this over the next week.
Yes.
I think that represents kind of the feeling where the board was at last week. So I would have had something to the effect of no sooner than. And that allows us to continue to monitor it, and if we can now get a different recommendation, we can bring that recommendation forward, which will be based on continuing to monitor the variables that we've been monitoring all along.
Okay, and so then what kind of guidance would be helpful for the administration to be able to have if, just imagine, something explodes and we're not able to go back into hybrid learning on the 7th? Then what kind of information would people like to have to make that decision on behalf of the board?
So can I just ask one more question too? Because we
Yeah.
talked about this last week, where we have sort of our own school district metric guideline for whether we're going to be in distance hybrid or face-to-face.
Yeah.
I would like to see a metric, I'll ask again, for a metric, a guiding principle for sports and extracurriculars too. So separate from educational, but just for sports and extracurriculars.
So I think you're talking about the matrix that we discussed last week and have it broken down as to infection rates or close contacts for that particular sport.
It's comparable to the, the schools.
Yep, I think that's a good idea.
So do we need formal action for that guidance? I mean, we've had a pretty robust conversation here for them to have heard here and play back to hear. What I'm getting at, do we need a resolution as simple as suspend athletics until no sooner than December 5th, period, and use our conversation we've had right now as guidance for the board for future decisions? Or do we need a formal action to try and spell that out, tie our hands on what that is?
Jamie, do you want to weigh in? I'm inclined to go with Dave's suggestion, which is to suspend athletics until December 5th and then taking the other part out.
I don't think you need to take action on that because we've already established a process for how we're going to decide our living environments.
I'm comfortable with that approach. I think it moves us in a direction while also obviously there's been healthy conversation with the board that's important for administration to hear. And we will continue to take the board's guidance and continue to move forward based on the conversation that was just had.
Okay, so the motion now is to move to suspend athletics until December 5th. Yes.
Extracurriculars, no sooner
Yeah,
than.
that's right,
No sooner
sorry.
than.
Co-curriculars would begin no sooner than December 5th.
Period.
Period.
All
Is
the
there anything
discussion
more?
can stay out because technically that's background for the recommendation.
I think
So
that
the
is
discussion is background for the recommendation itself.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's,
so that's all we need right
I think
now.
that's what threw
Yeah,
all of us.
yeah,
That's what-
exactly.
All right.
I was trying to blend that, yeah.
Yep, can I just, one thing I'd like to say, you are trying very hard to separate the two issues and you won't be able to physically. And the reason being is because we have River Falls student athletes or River Falls students in forensics or other things. So even if we put a metric of athletics together, they're still considered a student. So what we always have to, again, just for sake of transparency, what could happen, as Todd suggested, would be one solution or one suggestion that if we did not have enough staff at River Falls High School, that would be one of the only spots that probably high school athletics could continue if we weren't able to offer services per se in the building. The other option that you're thinking of, and when I do all the contact tracing and regrettably have to call over 100 plus families over the last few weeks, we're averaging, again, with fall sports participating and other things, roughly that 55 to 60% are basically student athletes or students of ours. So the only other scenario would be that you would have no student athletes that were impacted in any of our sports, but we had high enough numbers of just River Falls High School students that we were saying it was a safe environment in the athletic or co-curricular area and not in the high school area. But you also have to remember, they're also still students of River Falls High School. So as much as you really want to try to separate the two per se, you can divide them out as best or tease them out as best as you can, but they're still in two spots.
I guess Kit's point is our recommendation may be what it was last Thursday when we decided to pivot to at-home distance learning at the high school. It was in addition to that, we decided to suspend athletics for the time being.
Correct.
That those, while they can be separate decisions, they may arrive at a pause in both regards. And the board is just saying, look at each individually, even though the outcome might be the same, it may be different.
Yeah.
Earlier in the year, we were able to continue the hybrid model and pause one particular athletic activities and laws concerning athletics. So this movement forward allows us to have that flexibility. And kids just say, you are looking at the same batch of people, and the recommendation may still be the same.
So it could still be one or more of our co-curriculars that cause us to pivot into a fully online environment. If you look back at our tracing, it was a co-curricular and a high number of just non-co-curricular students and families. So it was a combination of both. It can happen like that again. We will try to do our best to pivot in and out, so to speak, of athletics or co-curriculars when it's warranted. But the reality is we still look at a total number of our students and how it's impacting our community of River Falls High School as a whole. So I get what you're trying to do is separate them, but they're still going to be connected in some web of some kind when we're looking at content.
I don't think we think they're completely separate.
Correct.
They're definitely overlapping. For
And if I could just say one thing to the kids on the camera, because they're all listening and I want them to hear this part of it. We really, really need you as students and families to share that information with us. So with our metrics that we have, River Falls High School families, please call our main office again and let us know if you're a close contact or if you are a positive test. Those numbers will determine whether we're even able to open on December 7th, and we need your continued cooperation for that. So this board, you can hear, is talking about some great and heavy decisions right now, and we really need your support in providing that information so we can stay safe and healthy throughout the winter. Thanks.
My concern, kid, is they're under report so that they would be able to get in.
I hope not.
I hope
again,
not. I really do.
Either way, if they report, we still get it from St. Croix and Pierce County.
Okay.
So again, it's the whole point of us making sure we have accurate data so we can make those choices on.
You still get notified by the county.
We
so
still
you know.
do.
Okay.
And this is where I hope that character comes in.
Yes.
Because people recognize this. The point that I would like to be able to make to our kids is, for heaven's sakes, we want you to have these opportunities. We want them. We're struggling with this because we don't like to have to limit things. We truly hope that this is an investment in being able to go forward safely. But the thing is, I can't promise that you're going to be able to go back and do all of the extracurricular activities if you don't take the safety precautions. But I know for sure that if you don't do it, it's going to make it a whole lot harder. So, okay.
I was just gonna say, I found this conversation really helpful, but it must seem a bit frustrating to those who aren't on the board to listen to us talk, but we're 7 community members trying to represent the community, and we all know, just based on, if nothing else, our email in the last 6 weeks, that there are no simple solutions, even though some people suggest that there are. So we've got to figure out a complex issue, and us talking back and forth and trying to work this out, figure out a way, are we going to make a formal motion or not, and let the administration do this or not? Those sound like simple things, but we got to talk through it and get on the same page here before we move ahead in the best interest of the districts.
Alan, that's a good point, because we don't talk outside this meeting, we can't. So that's why we have to have this bouncing around and all that type of thing. So we have to make the sausage here, so.
That's true. And it is a bit more clumsy than I typically like to see, but I think we're going to get someplace now. So do we have a motion? Actually, I think I did move that, right? Okay, good. And we have a second.
What is it now? Let's just
The
clarify.
motion is that we are suspending extracurriculars until December 5th.
Okay.
And at least, no sooner than December 5th. And that administration, that's not part of the motion, but administration will do all that. And it's been seconded. More discussion.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
Anything else? Okay, I'm going to take a vote. Roll call, Cindy.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
I'm saying yes.
Yes.
Ellen.
Yes.
Bob. Amy.
Yes.
See, hers isn't delayed. The motion is carried. I'm sorry for the clumsiness of this meeting. Typically, we aren't quite as clumsy, and I take responsibility for that. But I think that we understand each other, and that's important. So, okay. The next item is to approve the second reading of new policy 587 related to public complaints, as well as the second reading of policy 870 for the rule, public complaint procedures. Is there a motion, please?
Um,
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Amy, and it's been seconded by Todd. Any further discussion? We had extensive conversation about this when it was first placed before the board. All right, I'm going to take a roll call. Amy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
I'm saying yes.
Yes.
Matt, yes?
Yes.
Todd, Cindy?
Yes.
The motion carries. The next action is to consider, it's the first reading of revisions to policy 343.2 related to class size guidelines. That's the second reading, isn't it?
Second reading.
This is the second reading.
Yeah,
This is wrong. So it's the second reading of revisions to policy 343.2 related to class size guidelines. I've made that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any discussion? Roll call, Cindy?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
I'm saying yes. Alan? Bob?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes. Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, Ellen, do you want to talk about Ed program, please, that met on November 16th?
Yeah, there was no action on this. We sat and basically talked about some of the things we're talking about today, the metrics that would be used to determine whether or not we would pivot and how we would pivot. And we just had this conversation in the Ed Programs Committee, in part because it impacts the way in which we teach and how we teach, and we had some good discussion about that. So.
And one of the challenges that we found is even on a matrix, there's ambiguity within the matrix.
Absolutely.
As we're trying to be able to make the most informed decisions.
We're feeling our
not
way
easy.
about around this. And I've been thinking about this tonight. Go back to the comment we had that night. It seems like a long time ago in this room when we voted on what we were going to do this fall and do the hybrid and all that. We had all those options up there. And the one thing we could agree on right away was that none of them were what we liked. That all of our options really had significant drawbacks to them, but the pandemic was driving it. So it just continues to drive all of the things that affect us right now. Yeah, this isn't the ideal situation. We can't have an ideal situation right now, but we're doing the best we can.
Okay, do we have any future agenda items? Then we're going to schedule meetings. The next special board meeting will be on Monday, November 30th at 6. Education program will meet Monday, December 7th at 5:30. Personnel will meet Monday, December 7th at 6. There will be a special Board of Education meeting on Monday, December 7th at 6 o'clock, or at 6:30, excuse me. Educational program will meet Monday, December 14th at 5:30. There will be a special Board of Education meeting on Monday, December 14th at 6:30. Finance and Facilities will meet Monday, December 21st at 6. The next regular board meeting will be Monday, December 21st at 6:30.
And there are 2 Ed Program Committee meetings under this, not a mistype, but we're going to take up some 1 week and then revisit it a week later based on some feedback. So.
Correct. So my last comment before we move into executive session is to say that I absolutely know that there will be people who are really disappointed with the action tonight, with the decisions, but I really hope that everybody recognizes that we have been very careful and reflective in making the decision and respect the process, even if they don't agree completely with the final decision. And with that, is there a request to move into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute Section 1985-1G for the purpose of discussing strategy and/or possible litigation?
So moved.
Thank you, Ellen. A second. I need a roll call for this. Amy, I'm going to say goodbye and thank
Yep, I'll
you.
talk to you guys later. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
I'm saying yes.
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 The motion is carried. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.